Claire and David Miller were the couple everyone admired. High school sweethearts turned small-town success story. Until one stormy night revealed a betrayal so deep, David turned their home into a trap of fire and death with his wife and her secret lover inside. Willow Ridge was the kind of town where everyone waved to each other at red lights and locked their doors more out of habit than fear. Nestled between sleepy hills and whispering woods, it had a rhythm all its own, slow, predictable, and comfortable. On Maple Street, where children rode bikes until dusk and neighbors hosted barbecues every summer, stood a simple blue house with white shutters and a neatly trimmed lawn. That was the Miller house. To anyone passing by, it looked like the home of a happy, steady couple, living out their quiet version of the American dream. David and Claire Miller had been together since their teenage years. They met during sophomore year at Willow Ridge High, fell in love during senior prom, and got married just a few years after graduation. For most people in town, they were the couple that had it all figured out. David, a broad-shouldered man with calloused hands and a shy smile, ran his own small contracting business. He fixed roofs, remodeled kitchens, and repainted houses. He was the kind of man people trusted with their spare keys and alarm codes. Claire, on the other hand, was a second-grade teacher. Her students adored her, and parents trusted her to not only teach but to care. Every Sunday morning they went to church. Every Friday night, they watched the same show on the worn-out couch in their living room. Every year they went camping up north and took a photo by the same lake. On social media, Claire posted old pictures of them kissing on hiking trails or decorating the Christmas tree. David's feed was filled with tools, ladders, and before and after shots of his projects. To their friends, their life looked ordinary, but in the best kind of way. But inside the blue house with white shutters, things had started to shift in small, quiet ways. David worked longer hours. Not because he needed to, but because he didn't feel like coming home. Claire stayed later at school, claiming she had papers to grade or meetings to attend. They spoke less, laughed less, and touched less. Mornings passed in silence. Dinners were often eaten in front of the television without much conversation. They blamed the years, the stress, the routine, but the truth was simpler. They had stopped looking at each other. David noticed how Claire had become more careful with her phone. She turned the screen away from him when she texted. He told himself it was nothing. She had always been private. But the distance kept growing, like a draft through a cracked window. She started going out with friends more often. Sometimes she came home smelling like wine and perfume not hers. He told himself not to worry. After all, they'd been together for so long. People go through phases. That's what he thought at first. In a town like Willow Ridge, secrets don't usually stay hidden for long. But David and Claire's was different. It wasn't loud. It didn't scream for attention. It crept in, day by day, until something that once felt solid started to rot from the inside. And no one, not the neighbors, not their families, not even their closest friends, had any idea just how close it all was to burning down. It started with a smile in the hallway. Ryan Hale was new to Willow Ridge, just hired as a long-term substitute at the elementary school where Claire taught. He was younger than Claire by a few years, with an easy charm that caught people off guard. Students liked him, the staff welcomed him, and within a few weeks, he became a regular face in the teacher's lounge. Claire noticed him early on, not just because he was new, but because he seemed different from the world she lived in. He wasn't weighed down by routine or dulled by time. He was full of stories, enthusiasm, and a kind of energy Claire hadn't felt in years. Their conversations started small, a shared joke, a comment about the chaos of the classroom, a mutual eye roll during long staff meetings. But slowly those brief moments grew into longer talks after school. Ryan would stay behind to help Claire with bulletin boards or to walk with her to the parking lot. He remembered the little things she said and brought her coffee just the way she liked it. Claire told herself it was just a friendship, that she was just enjoying the attention. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. At home, things didn't improve. David had grown quieter, more distant. He wasn't too cruel or angry, just absent in a way that couldn't be fixed with conversation. He ate dinner without looking up from his phone. He left early for work and came home late, always tired, always distracted. Claire began to feel invisible in her own house, and that loneliness left a space wide open for someone like Ryan to fill. The first time they kissed was in Claire's classroom, late in the afternoon after everyone else had gone home. It was quick, electric, and terrifying. She pulled away, full of guilt, but she didn't tell him to stop. From that moment on, a line had been crossed, and there was no going back. What followed were secret lunch dates, long drives outside of town, and nights spent in small motels where no one knew their names. Claire felt like a different person, alive, wanted, seen. David noticed the change, but he said nothing. He paid closer attention, though. He started checking their shared bank statements more carefully, noticing charges from restaurants they hadn't visited together. He saw unfamiliar calls on the phone bill and grew suspicious when Claire claimed to be attending work events that never showed up on the school calendar. Still, he kept quiet, storing the details like puzzle pieces that hadn't quite clicked into place. One night, when Claire came home late smelling of cologne that wasn't his, David sat alone in the dark, his mind spinning with certainty. She wasn't just unhappy. She was in love with someone else, and that realization didn't bring sadness. It brought something colder, deeper, something that began to take root in the silence, growing stronger every day. Ryan Hale had no idea he was being watched, and Claire Miller had no idea that her husband's silence wasn't forgiveness. It was the calm before the storm. David Miller had always been a man who fixed things. Broken fences, leaking pipes, shattered windows. He knew how to make them whole again. But nothing in his toolbox could repair the emptiness that had taken over his life. Each day, he woke up beside a woman he no longer recognized, ate meals she barely cooked, and lived inside a home that felt more like a waiting room than a sanctuary. And all the while, the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The lies, the excuses, the changes in Claire's routine. It was all too obvious now. He followed her one night. It wasn't planned. He saw her leave the house in a dress she hadn't worn in years and felt something in his chest snap. He got in his truck and stayed far enough behind that she wouldn't notice. She drove 2 towns over, parked behind a hotel, and walked in without hesitation. An hour later, David saw her leave with the man he had only heard about in whispers, the substitute teacher. The one she had said was just a colleague. Watching them laugh and kiss in the parking lot under dim lights, David knew the truth. And the truth settled into his bones like ice. He didn't confront her, he didn't cry or scream. He simply went home, sat at the kitchen table, and started planning. It wasn't dramatic or fueled by rage. It was quiet, methodical. In David's mind, he wasn't destroying anything. He was cleaning up a mess. He started buying supplies, gas cans, a padlock, timers, gloves, all things that wouldn't raise suspicion if found in a contractor's truck. He researched house fires, read about accelerants, and studied floor plans. The plan had to be perfect. It had to look like an accident, like something tragic and unpredictable. Timing would be everything. That sass when he heard about the coming storm, a fast-moving weather system that would bring high winds and the possibility of downed power lines. It was the perfect cover. A fire on a stormy night wouldn't seem unusual. Investigators would blame faulty wiring, maybe an overloaded outlet. And with him out of town on a job site, there would be no reason to suspect otherwise. He changed the locks on the back door of the house without telling Claire, replacing them with ones he controlled. He rigged the entryway with gasoline-soaked rugs and lined the living room with furniture that would catch quickly. In the weeks leading up to it, he acted as normal as he could, fixing things around the house, sharing brief conversations with Claire, pretending not to notice the messages she tried to hide. On the night of the fire, everything fell into place. Claire texted him that she'd be staying home for the evening. David pretended to be miles away, sending a photo of an old job site to a friend to create a digital alibi. He waited in his truck just down the road, watching as Ryan arrived, walked inside, and closed the door behind him. 15 minutes later, the house lit up like a signal flare. David didn't flinch. He drove away slowly, silently, like he had just finished another job. The fire was fast, violent, and unforgiving. Flames tore through the house in minutes, devouring wood, furniture, and everything in their path. Neighbors were woken by the sound of windows exploding and the sickening glow of orange against the dark sky. One person called 911 after hearing a loud pop, followed by the eerie silence that only follows disaster. By the time firefighters arrived, the house was fully engulfed. There was little they could do beyond containing the blaze and keeping it from spreading to nearby homes. In the aftermath, as the smoke cleared and ash drifted through the cold morning air, 2 bodies were discovered inside what used to be the master bedroom. One was confirmed to be Claire Miller. The other, through dental records, was identified as Ryan Hale. Both had died from smoke inhalation, with burn injuries so severe they were nearly unrecognizable. To those who knew them, the news was more than tragic. It was surreal. A respected teacher and her colleague found together in the same house, dead in a blaze that had left no witnesses. At first, the investigation leaned toward a tragic accident. The storm had knocked out power lines in other parts of town. Faulty wiring was a common culprit in older homes, and the Miller's house was no exception. Investigators noted the stormy conditions, the age of the structure, and the charred remains of the electrical panel in the basement. Claire's death was ruled accidental. So was Ryan's. For a short while, the town mourned without asking too many questions. But the quiet didn't last. One neighbor had a security camera installed above their garage. When they reviewed the footage, hoping it might have captured the fire's early moments, they saw something unexpected. At exactly 2:04 a.m., a pickup truck could be seen turning off Maple Street and disappearing into the woods along a back trail. 9 minutes later, flames appeared in the frame, erupting from the Miller home. The timestamp was precise. The angle wasn't clear, but the outline of the truck resembled David's. This prompted a deeper dive. Investigators began to look beyond the surface. They returned to the house and sifted through the wreckage, this time with a different lens. Beneath a pile of collapsed drywall, partially melted but still identifiable, was a metal gas can. It had traces of an accelerant that didn't match anything naturally occurring in the house. That discovery shifted everything. They began tracing David's movements. Though he had claimed to be out of town, cell tower data told a different story. His phone had pinged near Willow Ridge just hours before the fire. On top of that, a store clerk from a local hardware shop remembered selling him several gas cans weeks earlier. When the forensic team dusted the gas can for prints, they found a partial thumbprint, enough to match David Miller. The fire was no longer seen as an accident. It was now a crime scene. And the man believed to be grieving the loss of his wife suddenly became the center of a murder investigation. David Miller was found 3 states away, living in a weathered cabin that had once belonged to his father. It sat at the edge of a quiet lake, surrounded by thick trees and silence. When the police arrived, he didn't run. He opened the door, stepped outside, and calmly placed his hands behind his back. He didn't ask why they were there. He didn't protest. It was as if he had been waiting for this moment since the night he lit the match. Back in Willow Ridge, the town was reeling. The news hit hard. Most couldn't comprehend it. The idea that David, the quiet, hard-working man they'd trusted for years, could be capable of something so dark. Some refused to believe it even after his arrest. Others admitted they'd sensed something was wrong in the Miller house, but never imagined it would end this way. As investigators continued to gather evidence, the story became clearer, though no less horrifying. In court, the prosecution laid out the details with chilling precision. They showed the purchases David had made, the gas cans, the gloves, the tools. They mapped out his movements before and after the fire, using surveillance footage, gas station receipts, and cell tower pings. They explained how the fire was set using accelerants placed strategically throughout the living room and hallway, cutting off escape routes. They revealed the fingerprint found on the gas can buried in the debris. Everything pointed to one conclusion: David had planned the murders in advance and executed them without hesitation. The defense team tried to paint a different picture. They argued that David had acted out of extreme emotional distress, a man pushed past the edge by betrayal and heartbreak. They said he had suffered in silence watching the woman he loved build a life with someone else. They called it a moment of madness, not a premeditated act. But the evidence was too strong, the planning too meticulous. The jury didn't need long. David was found guilty on all counts. 2 counts of first-degree murder, arson, and destruction of property. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He showed no emotion when the sentence was read. No tears, no anger. Just the same blank stare he had worn since his arrest. After the trial, the house on Maple Street was bulldozed. Nothing was left but a patch of scorched earth and a for sale sign that stayed up for months. No one wanted to live on that land. It became a place people drove past quickly, avoiding the glance toward what had once been a home. Willow Ridge never truly recovered. The fire had taken more than 2 lives. It had shattered the illusion of safety, of knowing your neighbors, of believing that love always endures. In the end, the quiet man who fixed broken things became the one who broke everything beyond repair. And the perfect couple was remembered not for how they lived, but for how it all went up in flames.